How's it going, guys? Vaibhav here and welcome back to another video. Now today I want to talk about the Oppo Reno4 and 4 Pro series because these phones have been making the rounds for the past couple of weeks now, and I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to address, specifications, my thoughts, hardware, etc. And because these phones come out on the 5th of June, which is just a week away, this is sort of the perfect timing. Now, whether or not it makes sense for Oppo to release a new Reno lineup just 6 months after the Reno3 series will be something we'll have to wait and watch, but the Reno3 in fact was announced and launched on December of 2019, but it wasn't until March that we saw it in international markets on a more profound level. And I got a chance to spend some time with the Oppo Reno3 Pro and I made a full review of it over on GN Tech. So if you want to check that out, you can do so by clicking the link down in the description. But basically, I thought the design had some sacrifices. The processor was the P95 MediaTek Helio processor, so it wasn't out there when it came to specifications. The camera was actually decent. It kind of surprised me the nighttime performance it delivered. However, when it came to overall pricing and sort of the overall package, it wasn't really out there because it was priced at 1,899 dirhams in the UAE, and for that price tag you could get phones with a Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 Plus in the OnePlus 7T, for example, back in the day, etc. So I thought it wasn't a phone that we could recommend as such, but it was a nice way for Oppo to get into the market. It had a flat screen and all of that, the AMOLED panel, etc. was great. But now the Oppo Reno4 is finally here, and I think it borrows a lot from the Oppo Find X2 Pro, if I'm not mistaken. It has pretty much all the design cues of it, and this is the official teaser video of both the 4 and the 4 Pro series in general. As you can see, the glass on the phone is a bit curved, and that's something we'll address in the specifications over on the next photo. It doesn't look like it's gonna have anything spectacular when it comes to the IR blaster, but one of the things I want Oppo to address is please include NFC on the Reno4 series, because it was something that I specifically pointed out for the Reno3 Pro review, and I think it's sort of a necessity now considering contactless payments are booming and we need that sort of technology on pretty much every single smartphone we have. So omitting it just for, saving a few bucks is not a nice move, but we'll have to wait and see for the official specifications. For now, we do have some idea of the specifications as seen from this leaked image. So as far as the Reno4 Pro and the Reno4 go, the Reno4 seems to have a dual camera setup. It's a 32 megapixel setup on the front, similar to what we saw on the Reno3 Pro, with a 2 megapixel depth sensor, it looks like, to get facial data, maybe become more secure, 3D face scanning, etc. While the Reno4 Pro doesn't have that. It's just got a 32 megapixel front facing camera. Now, as far as the back camera goes, we've got a 48 megapixel primary sensor, a 12 megapixel sensor which is supposedly a telephoto lens, a 13 megapixel ultra wide lens, and something with no megapixel count. I'm guessing this is a macro camera or a depth of field camera, whereas on the Reno4 we've got a 48 megapixel camera without optical image stabilization. That's something you have to keep in mind. An 8 megapixel camera which seems to be an ultra wide lens, and a 2 megapixel macro lens alongside another lens which could be a depth sensor. I'm not really sure on the whole how they're gonna market the fourth camera, and I don't really understand the language, so that's something you'll have to keep in mind when we see the official release. Now, with this optical image stabilization, they're teasing a lot when it comes to video, and if I switch over to this one, you can see handheld video without the burden of frivolous something, and I guess this is again a very rudimentary translation because this is all coming from Weibo, which is a Chinese website in essence, so the translation is going to have something iffy about it, but this is basically teasing the Reno4 series and how it's going to have some great stabilization. And because this thing has optical image stabilization, as you can see from the specifications, it all sort of ties in together. Now, as far as the processor goes, both are going to be the same exact processor. It's going to be the Qualcomm Snapdragon 765G processor, which brings in native support for 5G. It's going to be more powerful than this processor for sure. However, we're not sure how much of a difference it'll make from the 865. As far as theoretical speeds go, I think it's going to be about a 40% decrease in GPU power, which is a lot when you consider things like gaming, etc. But 5G support might be something that people want, and that's why they're doing it. As far as charging goes, another increment over the Reno3 Pro, not in terms of battery capacity. The battery capacity on the Reno3 Pro was 4025 milliamp hours, so this is 25 milliamp hours less. However, the charging speed on it was 30 watts. This is 65 watts, so it's the same charging speed that you find on the flagship Find X2 Pro series, so that's obviously good. 8 gigabytes of RAM, 128 gigabytes of storage. These are all pretty standard specifications. I don't know if the storage is going to be UFS 2.1 or 3.0. I'm guessing it's going to be 2.1 if they want to keep prices low, but if they want to make speeds, a priority, then they're going to make it UFS 3.0, which means faster reading and writing speeds on your smartphone. Now, as far as the overall footprint of the phone goes, it's pretty similar between the Reno 4 Pro and the Reno 4. The Reno 4 Pro has a 6.55-inch 3D AMOLED display. Both are going to be Full HD Plus panels, whereas the Reno 4 has a 6.43 2.5D panel. So what this 2.5D means is basically it's going to be a flattened out panel, whereas the 3D panel means it's going to be a more curved panel. That's the only difference between the panels, of course, with the size. Now, in terms of dimensions, again, fairly similar. They're not going to be making a huge difference. I can't really translate everything else that you see, but basically with the red writing, they're basically showing off that the Reno 4 Pro is an obvious increment over the Reno 4. And it's of course an upgrade over the Reno 3 Pro. Now, this is what we discussed. This is basically talking about video capabilities, but what's more is that you're going to be seeing an updated night mode on the Reno 4 Pro series as well. So we're going to be seeing better low light performance, and that's something that impressed me with the Reno 3 Pro. So with the Reno 4 Pro bringing in better performance, that's something I'm keeping in mind for sure. Now, as far as leaked videos of like the phone in action, this is one of them over on Vaibhav. Once again, I think Vaibhav is just a website that pretty much leaks everything, and I don't know why this is not loading, but you can see the phone for yourself. The camera setup does look a bit wonky, I'm not gonna lie. I think the triple camera setup is something that you have to get used to, but that glacial glow, or whatever they want to call it, I think it's called the Galaxy Glow or Crystal Glow, don't really know. Crystal Diamond technology is what's being used at the back, so blue color, that's what pretty much every single smartphone manufacturer are going for. And here are some more samples. So this is basically the same sort of design that, the likes of Honor and the likes of Realme have done, with the huge writing at the back of the phone. As you can see, the Reno Glow series. And yes, it's annoying, but I think it's sort of a trend that is supposed to catch on. I'm not pretty sure if people are going to like it. I'm not a fan of it, but if you like it, you could buy this phone. And that brings me on to price. We have no idea about the phone's pricing, but if Oppo wants to stay relevant, especially in this market segment that they're going for, they need to make sure the price is very competitive. I know the mid to high end price segment is a very competitive business in itself, but if they want to stay relevant, they need to make sure their pricing is on point. They can't price it at around the 2000 dirham mark, because I don't think anyone's going to buy this phone over, say, the OnePlus 8, which sells for 2399. So basically 400 dirhams extra for an increment in performance, increment in display, 90 Hz, etc. We don't know if this is going to be a 60 Hz panel or a 90 Hz panel, but I'm guessing it's going to be a 60 Hz panel from what the leaks and specifications are pointing at. But yeah, I think that is pretty much the Reno 4 series in a nutshell. I mean, in terms of looks, it's unique. It's definitely something different out there, and I can't fault Oppo for doing that. But as far as the overall package goes, we'll have to wait and see what they price this thing at, and how the optical image stabilization works, how the night mode works, and how the performance of the 765G is in person. Because so far I haven't got my chance to really test it out in person, and that's something I'm really looking forward to doing whenever I get this phone. If I get this phone, and if I'm in Oppo's good books, I might get this phone. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about the Reno 4 series down in the comments. Do you think it's just another phone to flood the market? Do you think it's genuinely going to be effective and it's genuinely going to pick up, traction? I think it's going to be a midway segment. It's definitely a phone that wants to, fill up the space for the 6 months remaining, and then they can come out with the Reno 5 Pro, which has, a much higher specification list, maybe a 90 Hz display, maybe a better camera, etc, etc. But I think this is sort of filling up the space between the past 6 months where, the Reno 3 Pro might have not picked up as much, and so they're pushing out the Reno 4 Pro to gain that audience traction once again. But yeah, those were my thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. This was Vaibhav, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.